Hi, everyone. We're here from Phoenix House. We're going to start our presentation now. We're going to be talking about what you all need to know about dabbing and edibles. We really appreciate you all for being here, for being with us, for coming to our presentation. And without further ado, let's get to it. Just really quick, just so that everybody is aware, we are recording these presentations for our own internal purposes. These presentations will also be made available on YouTube. You guys will have a time for question and answers towards the end of the presentation. Question and answer time is not recorded, so don't worry about maybe asking something. You're not going to be recorded. You could totally feel free to unmute yourself if you guys want to. You can also ask questions in our chat in the Zoom chat. Feel free to just type away whatever you feel like we haven't covered. Maybe we need a little go more into depth about certain subjects. Um, but with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start our discussion. So we're during our presentation today, we're going to be talking about what is dabbing, the different ways it's being consumed, some of those dangers, some of the health impacts of dabbing, and we're also going to cover what are edibles. So, what are the chemical components of edibles? Where are they coming from? How are these things being consumed and acquired? How does your body react? And what are some mental health risks? How is that putting your mind at risk? So, we're going to cover those different things, and we're going to go in depth about each one. So this is a quote that we found. What is dabbing? The number one reason why dabbing is preferred over regular marijuana inhalation is because it gives the user a faster and more intense euphoria or high. So once people sort of graduate in their marijuana use from just smoking marijuana to dabbing, it's a process of incremental use, of increasing incremental use. So people start off with maybe just smoking marijuana, just typically the plant itself, and then eventually graduate to dabbing because it gives a more intense and a much faster high. Um, with that being said, Juan, I'm gonna pass it over to you, and I kind of want to know, well, Juan, what is all this? What is marijuana? What is dabbing? Tell me more about it.
Julian, excellent question. Hello, everyone. My name is Juan Jimenez. I'm also one of the substance abuse counselors here at Phoenix House. And so, what is dabbing? So, dabbing is a trend that has picked up speed from the marijuana subculture, and it's becoming more common and popular just because of its concentrates, just like Julian mentioned just a couple seconds earlier. So, it's an extract of cannabis, marijuana, and what they're doing with this extraction, they're concentrating and amplifying its contents of THC. Now, in doing so, they're also adding flavors that make it appeal and exotic. For example, they'll make it like add apple oils and stuff like that, watermelon. So they make it very appeal. They kind of try to make it, in a sense, more organic. You know, if you think of an apple or watermelon versus like bubble gum type of thing. And this has attracted a significant amount of users, especially in the early range of, let's say, teens that are finding that these oils, because of its potency, it's being used extremely in high dosages now. Now, the other part that we're also going to talk about is ways how to consume it, how it's being consumed. We're not going to give details how to, but how it's being consumed. Before we touch base on that, let's talk about a little bit more on its effects of the concentration levels. So that is the hard part there to tell you exactly the amounts of marijuana and the concentrations that they have, due to the fact that many of these dabbing extracts are being made clandestine. They're being made in a simple garage or stuff like that. So there's no real way to measure. We'll talk about a little bit more how, for example, you can't have, you won't have labs that will put their name on it to test these substances for purity. So that's also brings the issue. So without further ado, let's talk about Steven's going to introduce ways of consumption. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Juan. Hello, everyone. My name is Steven Flamenco. I'm also here a prevention specialist here at Phoenix House. So guys, ways of consumption, right? We know the traditional method, either a bong or a pipe or some sort of paper to smoke marijuana, right? But so ways of consumption when it comes to dabbing. So basically, uh, uh, the surface is heated. It's usually often what they call a nail, a banger, or basically that attachment that's attached to this rig. So they heat it up. It gets up to a certain degree. There's a lot of stigmas on where it should be, 500 degrees, 600 degrees, 900 degrees, things like that, right? So they heat it up and then they just put the wax concentration, the dab on it. They wait till it starts smoking a little bit and then they put a top on it. Usually it's some sort of cap that you can buy online, and that's then they just inhale. Some of the other ways, obviously the rig or what they call recyclers, which is the picture to the right, that's a rig. There's also a bong with a banger attachment. Banger attachment is what they call basically the little attachment in this picture. You guys can see the brown part where the cursor is going over right now. So there's different attachments that you can purchase, but for the most part, if someone uses a bong, they don't want to buy a rig, they usually just buy the banger attachment, and these things could be bought basically anywhere. And then you have your methods like your vaporizers and vape pens, right? They take the concentrate, they put it in a cartridge, and then they smoke it through a vape pen. But there's also one of the other forms would be through a dab straw. And I believe in 2 slides, I'll go ahead and show you guys what a dab straw looks like. If anyone's not familiar with what the dab straw looks like, we have a few pictures, and I'm going to go ahead and bring awareness to ways that adolescents can get their hands on these things, right? So we saw a few pictures in the very beginning, right? The honey, creamy, buttery texture that wax looks like, but it also does come in other forms. So if we can go on to the next slide, thank you. So these are some of the different forms of concentrates, right? Here we have the visuals, the crumble. It's basically dried oil with the honeycomb-like consistency. So this kind of stuff would, I mean, as a parent, if you find some of this, in your adolescent's room, or a family member, you're probably gonna think it's trash, it's dirt, it's something that they either spilled honey on themselves or something, right? But this is exactly what it looks like. So you have your crumble, you have your batter or butter, not butter like the butter that you cook with, but it's called butter. This concentrate whipped under heat to create a cake batter like texture. So it is a little bit more of that creamier peanut butter type. And then you have shatter. This is translucent, brittle, and often golden to amber colored concentrate. And this one is made with solvents. So when you guys hear the butane and all of those, this is where that comes from. It's pretty crazy. There's a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of different ways where you can go online and actually watch this, which is another thing to kind of bring awareness to. It's easily accessible to adolescents. It's like homemade items that you can just use to kind of do this kind of stuff, which is pretty concerning, right? So then you have your distillates. It's refined cannabinoid oil. It's typically free of taste, so it doesn't taste like anything. This is added to, or most edibles, it's added to most edibles and vape cartridges. Then you have crystalline. It's isolated cannabinoids in their pure crystal structure. Most of the time, this is going to be the more expensive version. And then you have your dry sift, ground cannabis filtered. So it looks more powdery consistency, your rosin, um, and then your bubble hash, right? So this is actually what it looks like. I know that there's a few other versions of it because of the way the marijuana industry is evolving. They're coming up with different ways, different methods, different ways basically to extract the THC to get it to that ultimate level of 90s. I know it's already in the 90 percentiles as far as the THC levels go, but obviously their ultimate goal is to get it to as high as possible, right? So this is some of the ways it goes, or it looks like. I'm sorry. And the next slide, this is ways to purchase it, right? I don't want to make it seem like, hey, Amazon is bad. I use Amazon to purchase a lot of things for my house. When my kids need like a mouse pad, school supplies, stuff like that, especially right now with the way things are going, I use Amazon, right? But these are some of the dangers behind it. As you guys can see, these are items that you would buy at a smoke shop. You would have to be a certain age to purchase these items. One of the biggest things is these things are labeled as something else, right? If that second picture, Julian, if you can just go over the cursor with it. Yeah, it's that one. So that is a vape, or I'm sorry, a dab straw. It's not labeled as a dab straw, it's labeled as a honey straw. And the in their community, they understand obviously what that means. So that's kind of what they would look for. To the right of that, you guys can see what's a rig. It's easily accessible. And then below that, some of the items that are used to consume dabs, whether it be like the little AK-47 quote unquote wax carving tool. That's basically used to hold the dab once you put it in whatever it is that you're heating it under. The dab straw is a direct, it's almost like a pipe version of it. You heat up the dab straw, the end of it, and then you just put it onto the dabs and then you smoke it that way, right? So these are some of the methods, bringing awareness, guys. The holiday seasons are coming up. It's easy to go into a supermarket and purchase a family member a gift card to Amazon. These are some of the things that are easily accessible to adolescents, so definitely awareness, and just bringing it up to parents, letting them know, hey, I know last week we talked about online certain things about gift cards and purchasing things like that, and making sure that parents don't just give their kids their credit cards, things like that. But this can happen with Amazon as well.
Hey, Steven. And the same thing applies like for other websites like OfferUp, right? Where they don't not that approve the paraphernalia, but because of the wording. So how Steven was saying, nothing says here, wax pen or anything, but they're able to use different wording. And because the algorithms follow the wording and not the pictures, this kind of applies not to Amazon only, but the same thing for eBay, OfferUp, Facebook Marketplace. I know they're trying to tighten up restriction on those websites, but there's always loopholes that people find, unfortunately.
Exactly. And adolescents have to do that, right? They have to find a loophole in order to be able to get ultimately whatever product it is they want to buy. So they're going to figure out ways. And sometimes, it's unfortunate, but adults can give them the answers by simply just going online, and either YouTube, Google, whatever it is, So in the next slide, though, just want to talk some of the dangers of consumption. Obviously, faulty equipment, right? Either when you're making it or when you're using it. I've seen a lot of videos of just, them trying to make it at home in a kitchen, a garage, some sort of abandoned house, and they forget about certain things because they're under the influence themselves, and boom, you know, they get some sort of explosion, house burns down, people get hurt, things like that, right? So all of this, mainly faulty equipment when they're trying to extract the THC, is one of the biggest ones. And then consumption, you know, there are several side effects when it comes to dabbing. Some of them have been, they have discovered that psychosis plays a part, anxiety, severe hallucinations, high levels of paranoia due to concentrated amounts of THC entering the body. They are not aware as to how much THC is in their dab. A lot of times, you know, obviously an adolescent can be, or even an adult can be, wanting to, in a sense, kind of show off to their friends that they have the higher tolerance, and consume a large quantity that might contain a really high dose of THC, in which case you get your hallucinations, psychosis, and then obviously after that you have your hospitalizations, possibilities of getting in trouble with the law and things like that. So definitely these are some of the dangers when it comes to consumption. And the next slide, Juan's gonna go ahead and talk to you guys about edibles and what they are. Go ahead and take it away, Juan.
Steve, thank you very much. So, with dabbing is usually accompanied with edibles. Why? Because they also use the oils and concentrated cannabis extracts to add to daily foods and make them seem very, appealing. Just like these cookies here that have been infused with cannabis oil. You would have never know that the cookies have been infused. The cookies usually retain the same flavor almost, the same texture and the same look, and adding to the appeal of. So let's talk about um, how are they being fused. So they're being used. Most of the common ones that we've seen in the field, working in the field, baked goods is some of the most common ones, because you could add vast amounts of these oils. We'll talk a little bit more about the chemical components in a bit right now, and then how it reacts to the body. It's also added to candies. Gummies is a very popular one. We use this. We've seen working with the youth. Chocolate, beverages seems to be the trend coming up now. I've seen it myself in various stores where they have these drinks that look like a Monster, very similar in label, and they do have the THC sticker on them. So you will start seeing them more commonly, and the doses of THC are they vary. There's a lot of homemade, prepared for commercial dispensaries also, and it also comes with the issue where the amount and levels of the cannabis that is harder to track, just because of the extraction and how the oils are pulled together and with the food. So we'll talk about a little bit more now about the chemicals, and then we'll touch base because THC reacts differently with the body. We had a conversation just a couple minutes ago before this presentation, and we're just sharing information from with Julian. How these foods are able to process very differently in our bodies versus dabbing or versus the traditional way of consuming marijuana, which was through the inhalation through the respiratory system. So we're gonna have Claudia. Claudia, tell us more about these chemical components.
Thank you, Juan. So yeah, when we talk about chemical components in edibles, there are two main cannabinoids that we must cover, right? So the two main that often come up are THC, which is known as tetrahydrocannabinol, and also CBD, which is just cannabidiol. So if you aren't aware, THC is a cannabinoid that is responsible for causing the user to feel high or intoxicated. Basically, it's the chemical responsible for causing the euphoria effect. CBD, on the other hand, it's another cannabinoid, and it's also often found in edibles, but it doesn't have that intoxicating effect. So some can argue that it brings the therapeutic benefit, although really there is not enough data that confirms its medical use. So we're not going to jump into that, right? But nonetheless, it's very important to read labels when we talk about edibles, because the concentration of THC and CBD levels, they really vary, right? As you mentioned, Juan, they vary. They can be really low or they could be really high. And as Juan mentioned, like edibles, it could be a regular cookie from what we perceive as, or it can be an edible. And that's why it's really important when it comes to edibles to read the labels so that we know what it really is, right? So this brings us to our next subject. So how does the body react to edibles? And that's a good question, right? We talk about CBD, we talk about THC, but what does it do to us? So the important thing to know when it comes to how the body reacts to edibles is that it really does take a long time for your body to absorb the THC levels. So what this means is that the THC is present in your body for a longer time, and it takes longer for your body to feel the intoxicating effects of THC. Of course, this is dangerous because a lot of the times we hear stories about how adolescents will consume edibles and will keep consuming more and more because they think it's not enough where they can feel the intoxicating effects of the THC, right? And I know that me personally, I have heard this as a previous substance abuse counselor. I've heard it before. Well, we took edibles and I started with a little bit. I started with half a cookie and then I ate more because I didn't feel anything. But then later, like everything started hitting that person, right? And I do want to note that because since it takes a longer time for your body to actually feel the effect, it's important because you really need to be the person who is consuming this needs to be really responsible when consuming because of the high levels of THC. I also do want to note that the effects can last up to 12 hours with residual effects leading up to 24 hours, meaning that it can take up to 12 hours for you to just stop feeling the THC levels, but you might still feel the effects leading up to the 24 hours, right? So this does lead us to our next topic, the long-term effects of edible use. Take it away, Julian.
Wow, thanks, Claudia. So yeah, some of the longer term effects are mostly with brain development amongst the adolescent youth. When people begin using marijuana as teenagers, the drug may impair thinking, memory, and learning functions, and it affects how the brain builds connections between these different areas. So that happens because during the teenage adolescent years, the hippocampus and the frontal lobe are being developed. The hippocampus and the frontal lobe are directly are the ones, it's a part of the brain where we process all of our emotions and where we basically make good decisions. If a teen starts using marijuana, which is a cell growth inhibitor, during their adolescent years, then those areas of the brain are dramatically affected. I mean, obviously, depending on how much they're using and how regular they're using, will depend on what effects they feel in the long run. However, because these critical areas of the brain are being developed, and because of the inhibitory effects of THC, it can be very detrimental if used during adolescence. Some of the different effects that the adolescents may be feeling are an altered sense of time, changes in mood, impaired body movement, difficulty with thinking and problem solving skills, impaired memory. So those last two, the difficulty with thinking and problem solving skills and impaired memory, those may lead to worsening grades. So if you or a loved one or anyone is worried about someone taking marijuana or something like that, and you notice that their grades are going down, maybe you might want to ask them about, like, hey, what's going on? Why are your grades so low? How can I help you? Um, Also, in very, very high doses, it can lead to hallucinations and delusions. And if taken in very high doses for a very long period of time, it can lead to psychosis or acute psychosis. And that happens mostly when after like a very long period of time. It won't happen like after a week. It would happen after like a month or maybe a few months of high regular use. Some other mental effects that we covered already, the hallucinations and paranoia, but I just wanted to point out that they would be temporary. they would only be as long as the person is high. They wouldn't last any longer than that. If they do last longer than that, then you might want to worry about your teen developing schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is developed in the teenage years. In it's a severe mental disorder with symptoms such as hallucinations, paranoia, and disorganized thinking. There have been some studies that look into marijuana use and mental health problems. One of the things that I was reading about was marijuana use and schizophrenia specifically. What I was reading is that the rate of schizophrenia in marijuana users tends to be about the same rate as the general population. So what that means is that marijuana will not directly cause schizophrenia. However, it may worsen schizophrenia if the person already has that. Um, Marijuana use has also been linked to other mental health problems, such as depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts amongst teens. However, those studies have also been met with very mixed results. Sometimes a teen may be self-medicating. What that means is that if a teen sort of decides in himself, like, I have depression, I don't want to tell anyone about this, so I'm gonna find my own solutions to this way that I'm feeling. I'm gonna start taking marijuana. Sometimes that may make their depression worse because THC is a chemical, and you are adding a chemical to a brain that is developing and growing, and so that's going to change the way that that brain is growing and is developing. Some of us may like to believe that marijuana is natural and won't do cause any harm. However, cocaine is also a natural drug. Heroin is also a natural drug. These things all come from plants, and just because they're coming from plants doesn't mean that they will have no effect on you. Poison ivy is a plant. So some of us like to think like, oh, nothing will happen, it'll be fine. However, you can't just underestimate these plants and these chemicals like that just because they're naturally occurring. Um, a few more of the things about our adolescents' minds at risk is that people who use marijuana long term and try to quit do report having some form of mild withdrawal, and also these will vary or they will not be there at all. Symptoms that they'll be experiencing will be grouchiness, sleeplessness, so the inability to sleep, a decreased appetite, anxiety, and cravings. So the anxiety may have been present. However, with regular marijuana use, it may have decreased, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't already there. It just means that because marijuana can generally slow down or like blunt people's emotions, then those feelings of anxiety will also have been blunted. And that goes back to self-diagnosis and self-medication. How does marijuana affect a person's life? Well, compared to those who don't use any form of marijuana, people who frequently use large amounts of marijuana do report that they have a lower life satisfaction, poorer mental health, poorer physical health, and more relationship problems. People also report less academic and career success in the general population of people who frequently use large amounts of marijuana. For example, marijuana use is linked with a higher likelihood of dropping out of school. It's also linked with more job absences, accidents, and injuries. So even though marijuana will not directly cause you to drop out of school, it will not directly cause you to um, leave your job. It will not directly cause accidents. They are a component of accidents. They are a component of dropping out of school, and they are a component of being less satisfied with your life and with your relationships. So it's not to vilify marijuana. It's just that these are things that studies are finding. These are things that are being reported. to us, to NIDA, to SAMHSA, and these are just the findings that we have so far. With that being said, I'm going to go back over to Juan, and he's going to tell us how we can find some help, how we can find some resources. Go ahead, Juan.
Thank you, Julian. So, with being part of substance use disorder counselor, we have managed to put a list of resources that are very significant. So, for example, the SAMHSA toll-free number gives you a directory that has all the information nationwide to the locality of your current location. So that's always 24/7. There's also the LA County, the Substance Abuse Service helpline, the SASH. This service also is kind of like the SAMHSA, but it's more localized for LA County residents for all spas. And then we also have the website that does the same thing as SAMHSA, but on a local. The 211 also provides services for treatment for individuals and for health and human services in LA County. This is also a 24/7 service that's available. And it gives there's actual counselors there. They're actually live for any questions that you might have, or for any treatment facilities, or any questions even regarding, for example, a substance that you might have questions on. And there's also us, Phoenix House, here in California. We're located in San Fernando Valley, and that's our main line. And if you have questions about our services, that we're going to explain a little bit more right now. And there's also help available we also do referrals too. So if we don't have the services for you, we will find the services in the area. And we have outpatient services and the substance abuse. These are services that are tailored to the individual's time frame. So for example, if you're looking for treatment services and you don't have the time to commit in the mornings, let's say, we do have meetings in the evening that are being done through telehealth at the moment. So give it a chance. We all have busy lives. We do have more free time, a little bit more. Telehealth is being implemented, which is an excellent choice. More private. I see it being implemented more. You don't have to go to a facility. You just call them. You could do a FaceTime. We could do Zoom like this, and it works. We do also have outpatient mental services. Jenny Sanchez is the individual that's in charge. She's an awesome person. Wraparound, we also have wraparound services that have to be a DCFS referral. If you do have more questions about it, though, and maybe you don't have a referral, you could always give us a call, and we could find ways where you could find a program that might work for you. And we also do have MAT services. And if you have any questions on medically assisted treatment, and that's for opiate use, we also have that available for you. You go to the next slide, Julie. So contact us, Sarah Green, our program coordinator. So if you find that you work for an organization that might need information on opiates, or you're looking for naloxone training, or you're looking for questions on services that we might have, definitely reach out to us. Sarah Green is there, program coordinator. You can email us, call us, and all of our phone numbers are there. Juan, Julian, Claudia, Steven, and Morgan, which she's our clinical trainer. So we're available to you. So at this moment, I'm going to stop the recording.